Hello. Feel free to share suggestions, questions, and opinions in the comments on YouTube and Facebook. We'll try to explain and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. Will be reading our comments today, and he'll be our IT guy. The show will be available live on YouTube and Facebook, so it will be available later, so people who have missed it will be able to see it in the future. We'll work on turning into. We say this every week, but we will work on turning this into a podcast at some point. And the program will be about an hour long.
I love those video clips that Rich make for us every week. They're fantastic. But anyway, guys, welcome to PNP with P and P. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm wearing a hat, a glass, a long time no syphilis jumper, and I have a green background.
I don't think you said. You didn't say your name.
Oh yeah, and I'm Pedro. I'm Pedro Lino.
I'm Phil Samba. My pronouns are he, him. I'm in a black long-time no syphilis hoodie with a blue background and dress that are in serious need of a wash.
We both work for the Love Tank, a non-profit organization promoting the health and well-being of underserved communities.
PNP is a space in which we can discuss different topics within sexual health that we don't normally talk about. And when we say sexual health, we mean your state of physical, emotional, mental, and social well-being related to your sexuality, not just the absence of disease.
We have 6 episodes in total with different themes, and we hope they will not only inform you, but empower you. We will have a guest for most episodes, and today, at the end of the interview, we're going to give away a gift for one person who is willing to participate in something called Tier System, which is a game.
Let's get on to today's topic. So today we're going to talk about syphilis. Syphilis is a sexually transmitted infection, but it isn't always transmitted through sex. It's caused by bacteria that enters the body through close contact through small breaks in the skin. Many of us may not have heard about it or know little about it, but anyone who is having sex can get syphilis, but it might be more common in different groups of people.
Yeah, and according to Public Health England's report, annual diagnosis of syphilis has tripled in the past 10 years. On top of that, the rate of positive syphilis test results among blood donors has risen, suggesting an increase in the general population. This trend shows how important it is to raise awareness about this comeback we were not looking forward to. We call it a comeback because syphilis was common in the 70s, and we believe it had gone away, but it's back again.
I hope people get that reference.
Yeah, it's from RuPaul's Drag Race, guys, if you haven't watched it.
Have you ever had syphilis?
No, I never had syphilis. And I was talking to you earlier on episode 2 about vaccination. Dr. Eleanor mentioned on her Twitter, actually, that she works with STI, but she never had an STI, where she works with sexual health. I'm the same. I'm working with sexual health. I never had an STI. How about you?
No. For some weird reason, every time I get STI, it's always gonorrhea. Like every single. Never ever had anything else besides. So yeah.
So guys, you out there with syphilis, Phil Samba is waiting for you.
Okay, on that note, let's get into the interview.
Yeah, let's keep it. So we'd like to introduce our guests, Marc, Thompson, and Dr. Franki Lander. Franki, according to their Twitter, is a doctor in HIV and sexual health, an anime and drag geek, a gender studies MA student, and sexual transmission podcast, and their pronouns are she and her. Hello.
Hi, everyone.
And also we have our guest, Marc. Marc's Twitter profile says he's a director of the Love Tank, where PNP work. He's the co-founder of Prepster, and he has an interest in films, books, house music and hip hop.
So
Hi.
welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining us. How are you guys doing?
Good, thanks. Yeah, we were just saying before we were deciding about when is a good time to go out and start hitting the pubs and restaurants out of like the crazy few days that it is now. Should we kind of wait a few days? So we're still kind of in, I'm at least in kind of boring zone still, but really looking forward to getting out of it.
Okay. And Marc?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. I've had a week off work, so this is my first day back. So I'm straight into it with you lot. So that's a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm good. And a quick description: I'm a black man with a silver beard, more salt than pepper, short afro, wearing a black, long time no syphilis top, lots of colours, with a nice blue background and a piece of art behind me.
And for my audio description, I'm a mixed race woman with curly hair and a red bow on my head, and I've got a white background, and I'm wearing a black Prepster t-shirt, but I don't think you can see it very well, but it's on.
Guys, you go, Phil. I think we're going to make the same joke.
Okay. No, you didn't.
I was just going to say that Phil was laughing at Marc because Marc is really proud about his wall because he just spent the whole time of his holiday painting, and he's very proud of it. We are very proud of you as well, Marc.
We were definitely going to make the same joke.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first question is for you, Franki. And so earlier in the introduction, I mentioned earlier how syphilis can be spread through body contact. So can you explain, please? Can you please explain how else it can be transmitted?
Sure. So syphilis in itself is it's like a type of bacterial infection. Exactly as you say, you can get it from sexual contact, and it's most commonly from what we call mucosal surfaces, which is like your genitals, anal surfaces, and also oral. But it can also be spread through direct contact. So syphilis can cause some ulceration in the skin, and if you had contact with that ulcer, then it can be spread that way. And also, if the skin's kind of, if there's been a bit of friction or kind of exactly as you said, for any kind of like open areas as well, then it can be passed that way. And additionally, it can be passed what we call vertically, which means from mother to child when she's pregnant as well. So there's more than one way to get it, but it's pretty infectious. So you don't have to do very much to get syphilis, basically, if someone's got it.
Yeah, I think that's part of like why we thought this particular episode would be important, because I think a lot of people don't actually know how it can be transmitted or how easily it can be transmitted. So
exactly. It can be oral sex as well. Just anything with the mucosa. If someone's got it, then quite easy to get.
And what are the symptoms of syphilis?
So it's graded into different categories, kind of how long you've had it. So at the beginning, you might not notice anything straight away, and then very early syphilis, which we call primary syphilis, it can happen any time kind of between 9 and 90 days of when you've got it. So which is quite a wide time frame. That's up to 3 months, really. You may not know anything at all. And then if you do show signs of it, it tends to be like a little bump at the site of where you got the syphilis, basically. And then that forms into an ulcer, which can be painless, which means that people don't always see it, especially if it's in the rectum, or it might just be like a small area in the mouth. If it's somewhere that you're not looking, you may not notice it because you don't always feel pain, but it can be painful. And some people get multiple ulcers as well, which they sometimes mix up with herpes. So it's always good to just have a quick check just to make sure exactly what it is. Then that tends to go away. Then the next stage would be secondary syphilis, which happens about a few weeks after, but we say between 4 and 10 weeks after you've had primary syphilis. And that is a bit more noticeable. So people tend to feel a bit more unwell in themselves. They might have a rash everywhere, and it's quite distinct that the rash can be in your hands and your feet. And it's kind of just like a patchy red blotchy rash. And you can also, feel a bit feverish, your glands are up. People can also have effects of other organs, which they may not always be aware of, but it can cause inflammation in the liver and the kidneys as well. And from that stage, it's also possible for people to have effects on their nerves. So some people may notice like a ringing in their ears or a change in their hearing, and also changes in vision as well, which would be like a very urgent sign to get treated. But it doesn't happen in everyone. I know that sounds like a really scary start, but it's just if someone was coming with any of those symptoms, we would absolutely cover them for syphilis if we had any evidence of it. Then often those symptoms go away, and like I said, it's variations within that. So some people just have a little bit of rash and nothing else, and some people have those other symptoms. And then it goes into what we call later stages of syphilis. So you often don't have symptoms for quite a long time, and then in the later stages, if it's left alone, again, you can get kind of effects on the nerves at any point. But if it's left for decades, then you can have kind of irreparable damage to the heart and to the nervous system as well. So it can be anything from, like I say, just a very tiny little ulcer that is really hardly noticeable to losing your vision and hearing, which is obviously very extreme. So the mantra between all of those things is basically just regular testing, and it would never kind of get to that stage, if you see what I mean. So it's important to get tested even if you don't think you have any obvious symptoms.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Syphilis, I think, is one of the most interesting STIs. Sorry for that monologue, but it can really be, like they call it the what do they call it? It's basically, it can be anything. So it's a great deceiver kind of thing. So it can be anything from tiniest little mouth ulcer to some more extreme effects.
Okay. Wow. I'm still taken aback by the amount that one STI can do to your body, from a tiny ulcer into breaking down your entire central nervous system. It's pretty extreme.
Absolutely. And there's often periods in between that where you don't have any symptoms. So someone might come and be like, oh, I think something's wrong, and then it's gone away by the time they come to see us, but we can still pick it up in the blood test.
Marc, first question. Where can you test for syphilis and other STIs, and how do you treat them?
Okay, thanks, Phil. Just to follow up really quickly before I answer that from Franki, I had an email today from a colleague who attended the Long Time No Syphilis training, who had a client who they were working with who had syphilis for a really long time and has now lost their vision as a result of that, of it being untreated. So Franki isn't just talking about stuff which happens in theory. These things really do happen. And if you look at the history of syphilis, very often it has been attached to mental, cognitive impairment. We often talk about the history of syphilis and we think about people like Al Capone, the gangster in history. So again, left untreated, syphilis can be really, really serious. But I think the key thing, and Franki's mentioned it already, is that not everybody with syphilis will have symptoms. So that's a really important thing to remember. So having regular sexual health checkups will help to diagnose syphilis if you have no symptoms at all. But if you do have symptoms of syphilis that Franki has just mentioned, or if a sexual partner has contacted you to say that they've been diagnosed with syphilis, then you should make an appointment with an NHS clinic as soon as possible to get tested and to get treated there. In the UK, NHS services are free and they're confidential. So there's no need to worry about anybody getting your information at all. You can give a different name, you can do lots of things. But it's really important that you get in if you've been told if you have any of the symptoms that Franki has mentioned. And then you can get tested, get treated really quickly. You can go to your local clinic if you want the test, or you can go to one outside of your area. It doesn't really matter. The key thing is to get in there and get checked out. Will is already popping up. I can see quite frequently the information about Long Time No Syphilis and our testing information. But if you don't have symptoms and you're concerned about syphilis, then some parts of the UK have an online service where you can order test kits and get those delivered to your home or an address of your choosing, where you can do a blood prick test yourself, draw some blood, really easy for some people, a little bit more difficult for others. Send the results off and they'll let you know whether or not you have tested positive. And then you need to get into a clinic to make sure. And again, we popped up one site at SHL London where you can order test kits, but they're available around the country. The second part of your question, Phil, was around treatment. So you've got your syphilis diagnosis. Yes, it can be frightening. Yes, it can be worrying, but it's not the end of the world. You can get syphilis treated. I've had syphilis twice and I got it treated both times. A little bit painful. How does it get treated? Well, first of all, it's usually treated by an injection in your booty, so in your buttocks, in your bum cheek. It's an injection that you get there. It's a little bit, can leave a little bit sore. And those of you that have had a COVID injection and you've got the dead arm, it's a little bit like that in your bottom for a couple of days, but it passes, you know, so it's not a big deal. If you've had syphilis for a longer time, then you may need a longer course of injections over a couple of weeks to make sure the infection is cleared. Now, there are some people that don't like needles and won't go near them, and we completely understand that. So your doctor or the nurse or the healthcare professional you see in clinic might offer you antibiotic tablets. The really important thing to remember, folks, if you are getting treated for syphilis, is that you will be advised not to have sex for a couple of weeks after you've had your treatment. It's really important because you could still be passing the infection on. So just to recap, testing, if you've got symptoms or you've been told, get in touch with the clinic and get in touch with the clinic quickly. If you don't have symptoms, still get in touch with the clinic and book an appointment, or you can get test kits online. Treatment is injection in the bum, in the buttocks, not the bottom itself, or it's a course of antibiotics.
I mean, compared to losing the possibility of losing your vision, a shot in your buttocks, you know, is definitely easy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It is a big injection. Like you say, Mark, it's a big volume of injection, but we do put a bit of anesthetic in to make it a bit more comfortable. But it's important to be transparent that it is, ouch, it is painful. We just tell people to rest up for a little bit afterwards. But yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things is, you know, if people are having hearing problems, for example, visual problems, they often get sent to a different speciality rather than sexual health. There will be a delay. So it's important to kind of take ownership on those things and be like, okay, look, am I up to date with sexual health screens as well? Because it's not the first thing that comes to mind. And, you know, there is often an element of reversibility that we can do for if there's been any hearing or visual damage, but it's not 100% reliable, so it's just good to get that treatment in straight away.
Yeah. Well, the next few questions, guys, are based on the recent study published by Public Health England tracking syphilis from 2010 to 2019. Mark, in 2019, gay and bisexual men who were living with HIV had over 5 times the rates of syphilis and were testing less than those who were HIV negative. What do you think can be done about this?
Thanks. I mean, that's a great question. It's a really interesting kind of situation that we see happening with men who have sex with men, gay and bi men who are diagnosed with HIV. And this has been a long time that men who are positive very often have poor sexual health outcomes, be that co-infection with Hep C or, as you can see here, syphilis. I think one of the primary things that needs to happen is that many of us who live with HIV, we will have annual, biannual, or sometimes quarterly checkup with our HIV clinicians. Now, given that many of us are on treatment and undetectable, we will be having those appointments with our clinicians less and less. I only see my doctor twice a year now. But it's really important that when you are at those appointments that you ask for and you insist on the syphilis test. When you're getting all of your blood, your viral load, your CD4, all of those things, you ask for a syphilis test. I make sure I do, and you should ask your clinician for one as well. Now, outside of your regular appointment, you should always, if you are having lots of sex with lots of different people, then you should also get regular sexual health checkups. You shouldn't wait for your appointment every 6 months to get checked out if you're a guy living with HIV. It's really important, because if you are diagnosed with HIV and you acquire syphilis, the impact on your well-being can be much more severe. So the symptoms that you experience could be much harder for you, right? So the rash, the fever, all of those things will be exacerbated because of your HIV. So it's really, really important that you get a regular checkup from your HIV clinician, or if you're having lots of sex, you go in and you get tested more regularly for syphilis.
So basically what can be done is when you have your checkup with the doctor to ask for the syphilis treatment, so you can get the treatment early if you need.
Yes.
And because the prognosis can be much worse if you also have HIV, right?
I think it's more about the symptom. Yes, the symptoms can be a lot worse. They can manifest much worse. I think it's also important to just add in the treatment for syphilis. Franki, I'm sure I'm right, but correct me if I'm wrong, will not interfere with your HIV medication. So you can take the injection and it will be fine. So there's no reason, unless you just don't like needles. And then, as I said, you can get antibiotic tablets for that.
Absolutely. That's exactly it, Mark. So often the doctors who specialise in HIV also would be doing the sexual health clinics as well. So they should all be up to speed with that kind of thing. But it's good to just, again, know for yourself, just to check any different medicines. But the treatment for syphilis is definitely fine.
Yeah.
Antiretrovirals, sorry.
Marc, syphilis is also increasing, not only in queer men, but straight people too. You know, with the men testing positive much more than the women. It's believed that the rise in straight syphilis, please, not gay syphilis, don't get them confused, okay, might be because of straight men and queer men having sex. What do you do to reach out for these men?
Well, you know, when I got that question and it said straight syphilis, I was like, is it called straight syphilis because it doesn't like show tunes? I wasn't too sure. Has it got really bad fashion? I don't know.
It's from the report, guys.
You know, I think in all seriousness, though, I mean, when I saw this in the Public Health England report, it's a little bit worrying, because I think what we don't want to do is start pathologizing or making out men who have sex with men who may not identify as queer, who have relationships with women as well. We don't want to demonize them in it, right? We saw that with HIV in some black communities, and we don't want to start beating men because of this. But if we are seeing syphilis increase, and it's happening between men who have sex with men who then go on to have sex with women, then I think part of it is about partner notification. So ensuring that you're talking, but also if you are a queer man, it's about having conversations with your partners that you are having sex with about STIs and about things like syphilis. So it's about raising that awareness. Now, as health promoters, we can develop lots of campaigns and interventions to try to reach these communities, but very often that messaging, that information should come from people that we're sleeping with. So I think that this is one way that we can do, but also in clinics, clinicians also need to be asking the right questions of people when they present. So very often I know, particularly for some black men, when they've gone into clinic, they are immediately assumed to be heterosexual. So there are some tests that aren't offered. There are some questions that aren't asked of those men. That's not just black men, that happens to men. They may present incredibly masculine, they may roll in a hoodie, whatever it is. So we need to have much more nuanced, much more smarter questions where we're asking when people come into clinic. I think it's definitely about, if you're having sex with your partners, have conversations about STIs.
And you said about, Franki.
No, absolutely. I was just going to say, I couldn't agree more. I think it's, you know, it's very well, like having data being like, this person's in this category, this person's in this category, but I think it's very much taking it as an individual and asking someone, you know, are you having sex with men? Are you having sex with women? Are you having sex with non-binary? And all, like, just including them as an individual rather than trying to categorize them into that, which you might kind of, what's the word, like limit your expectations of what tests you need to do and what your plan is for them, because you've already, you might miss things, basically, is my point. And I think the data also kind of missed, you know, women who have sex with women. It also missed trans people. It also missed non-binary people. And all of that data is really important to kind of have a very kind of clear identification of who's getting syphilis and who needs to be kind of specifically targeted and found and supported. And especially as regards partner notification as well. If you would just say, okay, well, this guy's gay, this guy's straight, so therefore none of these things apply to him, it's not doing a good service to any of our patients.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, and the report also was saying that rates among pregnant people are raising as well. So Franki, what are your thoughts about this?
About pregnancy?
Yes, the rates of syphilis in pregnant people, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So it can be, that's quite an alarming consideration from the medical point of view. So they do test for syphilis in pregnancy. And from my understanding, I'm not a gynecologist, but from my understanding, I think they do it at the first trimester, so quite early on. And so there is, of course, then the whole rest of the pregnancy in which someone has, unless they specifically asked for it, may not be tested for syphilis. And syphilis can cause the baby to be quite unwell, and it's not always very obvious right from the beginning. So majority of babies who have had syphilis transmitted to them in the womb on delivery appear completely fine, and it's only a bit later on that you might see signs. And if people haven't been identified as potentially having risk, if the mother hasn't been potentially identified as having risk for the syphilis, then health problems that the baby later on develops may not lead to a syphilis test. So it's good to have those conversations because some of the health problems that it can cause in babies can be irreversible. So it can affect their development as well as it can cause deformities. It can cause irreversible health problems. And it'd be a really massive tragedy if that happened for something that can be really quite simply treated with a shot penicillin. So it's about kind of not having those presumptions about the pregnant person's sexual behavior and their encounters and who they're having sex with and their risks, and just presuming that they are in a closed relationship, or that they, all of these presumptions can be really, really dangerous. So it's about, I think, the person being offered that syphilis test as per standard, but also maybe giving them a bit of information saying, if you are potentially at risk of syphilis later on in the pregnancy, it'd be a good idea to get another test as well, and just keep that as an ongoing conversation rather than ticking the box and be done with it.
Thank you.
Marc, I'm coming to you next. Black people are diagnosed with syphilis the most. That's what the report showed. What do you think we can do to address that?
Yeah, I mean, once again, black folk are, there's a pop chart for STIs and poor health and health inequalities. We continue to be #1 all the time, like the Beatles. I think we see this across a number of different areas, and it is really distressing. We again are seeing this increase in syphilis, as we've seen in gonorrhea as well. Black communities have some of the highest rates of gonorrhea in this country, so kind of is no surprise that we're starting to see that on syphilis. I think that what's also concerning is that historically, as a black community, we have a connection to syphilis because of the Tuskegee experiment, which took place in the United States, where numbers of black men were not treated for syphilis for numbers of years, and it was an absolute scandal, which leads into a whole host of different things around mistrust of the medical community. So it's a really tricky conversation to have, But you're right, Phil, it's one that we need to have. We can't escape it. I think that some of the things that we can do are some of the things that we've already mentioned before, and that's obviously about raising awareness, but raising awareness in a culturally appropriate and specific way, which is also sensitive to the needs of that community, where they aren't feeling ostracized or victimized or blamed in any way for what's going on. I think it's important to say that Black people aren't doing anything which is, or aren't physically different, which is making them get syphilis more than other communities. So we need to think about, are people aware that syphilis is an issue in our community? That's one. So let's raise awareness. So how do we raise awareness about syphilis? Well, we can do it through really good campaigns like Long Time No Syphilis, which is highly targeted, which reaches and speaks to communities in a particular language using particular imagery. You can look at our new Peasy campaign, which we just launched with the Love Tank, which is targeting young African Caribbean men around gonorrhea. So we're using language and imagery which speaks to those men. We also want to think about how people access sexual health services. So very often some communities may not access sexual health services because they're difficult to get to, the opening times, they don't understand, they've had a bad experience there in the past. So we should be pushing things like home testing kits. That's really important as well. And also reframing what clinics, not the clinic shouldn't reframe, but we should be reframing to the community, this is what clinics are like and this is what you can expect. So today, it's absolutely wonderful that Franki is here. Young, mixed race, clinician, works in sexual health. I mean, who wouldn't want to go to a clinic where Franki's working at, right? So these are the things, these are the messages that we need to put out into our community, say the clinics are for you. And the final thing is that we need peers, people in the community, to talk about these issues. So we need men and women of color who have had syphilis or have been treated for syphilis or are aware of syphilis to talk about it in the communities, because other people will start to listen. There's no shame in STIs. There are things that will happen when we have sex. So we need to change that narrative as well.
It's a really good way of putting it. It's like there's things that happen when we have sex. It's just standard, isn't it, I guess?
Yeah.
Well, Marc, I guess you were the star of a long time no syphilis. I know we have some links and we put them up, but for those of you, for people who are watching or listening and that don't know what is long time no syphilis?
There's so many ambitions I had in life, Phil. To be the star of a syphilis campaign was top of that list. When I was 13, that's all I ever wanted. No, I mean, Long Time No Syphilis is a program of work which has run for about 18 months now. The last year of it was funded by Public Health England, and it was delivered by the Love Tank and Yorkshire Mesnat, and it had several aims. The primary aim was to raise awareness about syphilis in the communities most affected by syphilis or at risk of syphilis. A highly visual campaign which did a lot of work on social media to promote the work, to promote testing, treatment, symptoms, partner notification around syphilis. Because as you mentioned when you first opened up, syphilis has had a comeback and we are seeing the numbers continue to rise. So we felt it was really important that there was a community-based, grassroots, highly visual, engaging campaign. So that was part one of it. The second part that we recognized was about getting out into the community, making sure that people had condom packs, had resources, had information. So we worked with bars, venues, social media influencers to get all of this good stuff online, get condom packs into people's hands, because condoms are also the other way that we can prevent HIV. HIV, STIs mixed up there. We can prevent syphilis as well. And then finally, so two other parts. We did some training with a number of people across the HIV and sexual health sector, because we recognized that lots of people who are working in sexual health just needed to be updated and get lots of information. And then, you know, finally, we produced a series of videos starring yours truly, which are available on our website, which are fun, engaging, informative, which just tell you about testing, treatment, syphilis, and partner notification, and also living with HIV if you have syphilis as well.
Yeah, talking about Marc, you mentioned condoms, and we have a bunch of condom packs, guys. So if you need any condoms delivered to you, email us at outreach@prepster.info. I think we'll be able to put it down there on the comments, so you guys can email us, and we'll be able to send you for free.
Mm-hmm. And our final question is for both of you. I'm going to come to you first, thank you. Is anything more than what we've discussed that we can do to prevent syphilis?
So I think Marc's covered so many of the really important interventions, and I think it's kind of the underlying theme is just is knowledge and education around it, and also just responsibility of clinicians and the healthcare services providing these services to inform people involved, and like I say, to not have presumptions about people's risk and who needs to know what. I think most people will agree that the sex education that we get in schools is very limited and very basic, and we learn a lot of these things from trial and error. My case, having to go, you know, for 6 years in medical school and specialize in sexual health, this is not just taught all the time, and it can be a really it can be a massive game changer to be like, oh my goodness, I've got this thing I had no idea I had, what's that going to mean for me? So it's really about education of kind of exactly as you said, Marc, just normalizing the conversation about sex. Any single person who has sex can get syphilis amongst any other STI, and we don't really talk about it, and to keep it taboo or to be like, oh, this one is one I'm okay to talk about and not this one or whatever, really can actually be quite dangerous, and means that, you know, our friends or anyone else in our kind of social networks are kind of feel like, oh, maybe they shouldn't talk about it as well, and then all of this education, all of this important information kind of gets pushed to the side, or gets kind of like gets kind of mixed up with other things. And it's important to just be like clear, this is what it is, this is what you do about it, this is maybe how often you should get tested, if this is the situation, maybe this is more relevant to you, and just keep it nice and individualized, but just health promotion really, and just just hopefully, I mean, our job as the healthcare department is to make people feel comfortable to talk about these questions, and there's no such thing as a stupid question. We've all started with no knowledge of this, so it's important to kind of not feel embarrassed about asking these questions at the expense of maybe not getting a test that you need, if you see what I mean. And that's a two-way process. So yeah, open dialogue and conversing, and, you know, if people are, you know, maybe getting syphilis multiple times, just saying, look, there's no shame in that at all. Like I said, anyone who has sex can get syphilis. But it's just being like, you know, is there anything moving forward that we can do better to support you? Or do you feel comfortable? Do you feel safe? Are you getting tested? Do you know, not having that judgment on there, basically. And then going from there.
I always found it interesting how within sexual health, well, within, I guess, relationship and sex education, we don't talk about STIs. Like, I feel like it's a huge part of sex. It makes sense to discuss it. And also, I feel like that's kind of part of the issue that we have with, I guess, young people not attending clinics because they don't know that they have to, you know? Yeah, and I also, the other thing is that you said something about the stigma around syphilis, and I feel like the stigma around syphilis in compared to other STIs, bar HIV, is a lot more, I don't know, it's like a lot more intense. There's something about, like, it's okay to have gonorrhea or chlamydia, but if you have syphilis, it's like, it's the worst thing in the world. It's I don't know what, like, I always found that shit.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that is, like, part of that is that people are less familiar with it, maybe, and like some people say, oh, didn't that go in the Victorian times, or I've heard about that in the 70s, or like whatever, and people just, again, because we kind of don't start with very much, we kind of know maybe more about the, like, chlamydia, which is very more common in heterosexual heterosexual populations, and anything else, any education we get is kind of talked about in that context. And as much as heterosexual, as we've discussed, people and cis-normative people are getting syphilis as well, I feel our sexual health is very much framed as, you know, contraception and heteronormative STIs and all of these other things are thought of as niche, and maybe there's an extra layer of taboo there, which it's not warranted, because you can get it the same way and go and get your tests, you know, and we can give treatment. But I agree with you, Phil. I think people almost have a kind of a hierarchical system of which STIs are okay to get and which ones aren't, and some are dirty words and some are completely, oh, that's all right, everyone gets it, which is, it doesn't make any sense to me, but there we go.
When we did training back in the summer, we kind of came up with the family of STIs, and syphilis was the crazy uncle that you never invite to christenings. And, you know, HIV, you kind of, you know, you've tolerated and you finally got around to getting them, giving them a little chair in the corner. Chlamydia is a crazy teenager. Gonorrhea is a little bit wild, but, you know, but syphilis is the crazy uncle you just don't want to, you just, no, we're not going to invite him. You're going to get drunk and be badly behaved. And we just decided actually it was time to bring syphilis into the family, you know, because you do have an uncle. And you're absolutely right, Frankie. There is a hierarchy around STIs. I think we saw that evidence when we were pulling together the long-time nurse syphilis program. So Phil has done a lot of work around PrEP and was able to get PrEP users to talk really openly about their PrEP use. As a man with HIV, you know, I've been able to get more and more people to talk about their HIV. To get people to talk openly about their syphilis infection, it's like a real uphill struggle. And I think that everything that you've mentioned around preventing it is correct. But one of the biggest things that we can do to prevent syphilis is to destigmatize it. Is to just look at that family. It's an STI. You get it if you're going to have sex. And I love what you said, Frankie. You know, if you're having lots of sex, and we know there are some people who go out at a weekend, may go on a holiday, and will have as many partners as they can. We're not here to judge you. You should continue having the sex that you want. What we want to ensure is that you're tested regularly, you're treated regularly. And if you want to have a conversation about the amount of sex that you're having because you're really happy with it or it might be problematic, then let's have that conversation. So I think that absolutely we should be doing those kind of things.
Yeah, we have a question coming up from Mike. He was asking, oh, there's another one. Let's go with this one and then we go to the next one. Simon is telling us about his experience. He raised a good point that having had syphilis, blood tests still show up as being positive even though he's being treated. Oh, that's a really good point, because after you finish the treatment, can you have sex straight away, or do you have a window period that we have to wait?
So what happens, basically, there's two main tests for syphilis. One of them is like an antibody test, and they're both done on the same blood samples. You might not notice that two samples are being sent, but it's just the blood test. So one of them will always stay positive if you've ever had syphilis. So if someone's never had syphilis before, and then they get syphilis, basically, that test will always be positive. And then what we kind of measure is a second test, which looks at almost like, you can think of it almost like the activity. So if someone, it's done in a ratio, basically. And if someone has got new syphilis, we record that number, and then we measure it again 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months afterwards to make sure that number's coming down. And then if someone's got syphilis again, that second number will go up as an indication of new syphilis. The first number the first test rate will just always stay positive. So it's taking it in context, if you see what I mean. So if someone has done both the tests, which they should always be sent, really, or at least if they know they had syphilis, they should always be sent the second one, sorry, then they can interpret it basically to say if it's new syphilis or it's previous treated. It shouldn't say you've got syphilis every time. You see what I mean? It should be taken. So if that makes sense, if that's a bit of a wordy explanation. And then, sorry, as regards when you're treated, then we say no sex, including oral sex, for 2 weeks after.
So no masturbation, no sucking, no nothing.
You can have like no mutual masturbation, but masturbation when there's not going to be any fluids.
Okay, your hands on yourself. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not entire abstinence for 2 weeks, not that mean, but just no sex when you're in contact with anyone else for 2 weeks. And then you come back 3 months after your treatment for your first blood test, and we just monitor to make sure the number's going down.
And if you make out, that's fine.
So basically, you're not meant to have any sexual contact. And there's a bit of a debate about deep kissing, especially if someone has potentially a mouth ulcer. It kind of depends on. But we would say avoid sexual contact. Yeah, because it can still be mucosa of the mouth. Yeah.
We have this question, or this comment here. It says, Mike is asking if it's possible to get syphilis whilst injecting drugs.
So in people who inject drugs, there's a link of potentially higher risk behavior and potentially a link. The actual bacteria kind of just needs a surface to go in, so you in theory could, but I wouldn't say it's something that we see commonly that as a route to syphilis transmission, if that makes sense. So any time where the bacteria is there, it can be passed to other people from the body fluid, like from the surface, if that makes sense. But you'd think the injected drug users is more higher risk of bloodborne infections. So, for example, hepatitis C and HIV are the ones that you'd be screened for more than syphilis as such. But again, it's on the same blood tube, so you just tick a box and send everything.
Okay. I think I'll take this one as the last one. But does HIV?
One after that, but it can be quick. But I do have one after that.
Okay. Does HIV PrEP stop syphilis?
No, unfortunately, that would be really handy. But no, it doesn't.
On NetReach, I have a question. Someone asking if they can have a syphilis twice, or do they develop immunity the first time? But you answered that by saying no.
Yeah.
So you can get it infinite times, basically, is the answer. So once you've had it and then you've got treated, you obviously draw a line under that episode, but you can still get it again and again and again. There's no kind of indication that you can become immune to it, because that would be handy as well. But no, you're still at risk.
Thank you.
And just on the PrEP and HIV, the PrEP and stopping syphilis question, absolutely no, it doesn't prevent syphilis. But when you're on PrEP, if you're a PrEP user, you should be having regular STI checks with your HIV, with your PrEP provider anyway. So you're tested very frequently. And again, we've already mentioned online test kits are available in parts of the UK as well. So again, lots of testing.
Okay. Thank you for answering our questions, especially Franki for putting you on the spot a little bit. We will share links for the syphilis report from PHE as well as to long-term syphilis. And I guess now, if you have more questions, please contact us at outreach@prepster.info. And I guess it's now time for the tier system. Good luck.
Yay! Well, guys, the tier system is a game involved answering very personal questions about sex. There are 4 tiers, and the higher the tier, the more personal the question. We created this game because we want to normalize and destigmatize talking about sex and sexual health. And there's a question for each guest and one for the audience. If anyone wants to play, please join us. And to participate, click in the link in the comment box. But bear in mind, you have to join us on live, sharing your face and voice. And just a tip, it works best on Google Chrome. It's a first come, first serve. And if you were accepted on the stream, please mute the Facebook tab or the YouTube tab to avoid echo. You only win a prize if you answer the question. And the prize is Long time no syphilis t-shirt. Okay.
We have no hoodies.
Pardon, Phil?
We have no hoodies left. Just the t-shirt.
There you go. So the question is being picked from our Prepster hat. And Mark, we'll start with you because we've done that before. So then it's Franki. Yes.
Okay, go on in.
And then Franki, and then the guest.
Okay.
And let's see what's coming up. Oh, I love the tension. Okay, it's a tier 3. Okay. And the question is, how do you feel about someone spitting in your mouth? Sex.
No. No. I don't even like watching it on porn. There's something just like wrong about it. I find it kind of offensive, to be honest with you.
That's exactly what I said to Phil. It's disrespectful. I remember once it happened to me. I was like, where's it come from? You know, like, what's happening?
Literally. Yeah, it feels like you're doing it to me, right? It's like, no, I didn't. No. I'm sorry.
You know?
I mean, you know what? Slap me around a little bit. Yeah, that's fine. That's all right. But no bodily fluids like that. No, that's just rude.
Yeah. That's rude. Okay.
Classy.
And it's a tier 1. So not too spicy.
Oh, you. Oh, okay. Oh, Franki. Okay.
The question, and the question, I love it. The question is, what's the amount of things you have had in 24 hours?
What's the what?
Most amount.
Yeah. Tier 1. I'm going to pretend that my internet's gone and just turn it off.
What happened?
Oh my gosh. My answer is multiple, and that's it.
Multiple. More than once.
Yeah. I'm just going to say the word multiple.
There you go.
Back off gracefully. How gracefully I don't even.
That's fine. So any guests want to jump in?
I'm realizing my sister is watching us. So
does she want to join us?
Tier 1. That was so much worse than Mark's question.
Listen, I got a bad one last time as well. Yeah,
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. It's very revealing, isn't it? But I think that's the whole point. As for you can see that he picks the questions off camera. Do you want to recount? We can do another one. That's fine.
Everybody else jumps in. I know quite a few people in this room, and I might name somebody. No, I wouldn't do that to join me.
You want to join us? Come and join us. Let's talk about sex.
Let's talk about sex, guys.
Come on.
No one's brave enough. Okay.
After that question, you put everyone off.
It's funny because I thought everybody was going to be so excited about this game, but then you had to remind me I might be a bit over-sexualized. So, and not everybody's like me. And I was thinking, yeah, maybe that's it. But it's too fun.
All of the questions have to be like brought down.
Yeah.
Like 5 or 6.
But anyway, guys, thank you so much for being so open during this part of the show. I know it's hard, you know, but you did it. And you did it brilliantly. And thank you for all the information you gave us as well. That's it for the tier system this week. And we'll remove you from the string now. Thank you so much for participating. It was brilliant.
Pedro, before you go, remember, long time no see.
You guys, you have all the links as well in the comments, so please check it out.
So if you don't know, that is from the Long Time No Syphilis videos, actually. So yeah.
You have the link there, people. If you want to watch the videos, we'll share it with us many times, and it's on the comments both on YouTube and on Facebook. So just scroll back, and you'll be able to get to the link as well. So Phil, tell me something you learned today.
I didn't know that syphilis could, like, permanently, if left untreated for years, could permanently damage your central nervous system. Like, that is wild. What did you learn?
It's scary, isn't it? I'm laughing because I'm nervous, because it's so scary. That's why it's important to keep testing.
Yeah, it just kind of reiterates the need to test, the importance of testing.
Yeah. And I learned that, you never asked, but I'll tell you anyway. You know, I learned that I think it was really interesting to listen how sexual health clinics, just by making the right questions, you can support people that might not feel comfortable about telling about their sexual life, you know, offering a sexual life. So that was really interesting to hear as well.
That came up a lot because there was this thing, both Franki and Marc mentioned it, which the assumptions. I think there's a lot of assumptions in sexual health clinics, which then lead to poor outcomes. So yeah, that was interesting too.
Yeah. So unfortunately, guys, that's all we have time for today. PMP is a space in which we can discuss different topics within sexual health that we don't normally talk about. The first 3 episodes are on our Facebook already and YouTube. And as soon as this one is finished, this one will also be available for you to watch. We have 3 more episodes this season. So please join us next week at 7 p.m. as we are going to talk about healthcare of trans people.
It was great to have you all with us for the 4th edition of PMP. Thank you so much for joining us, and I can't wait to see you again next week.
And follow us on the social media as well. On Twitter and Instagram is Team Prepster, and on Facebook is prepster.info.
I love how you say